You know, there are a few people whose work really can be described as indescribable, and one of them is my next guest, who was with us during our first season of 10%, and I'm ashamed to say hasn't been back until right now, the one and only Jewelle Gomez. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me back.
You're welcome. You know, I was saying that you're probably the inventor of the first official lesbian vampire.
First black lesbian vampire novel to be published in this country.
Yeah, and so how's it been? What do people think of the Gilda novels?
Well, it has been really great. For the last 25 years, the book has just blossomed. And it's, of course, when it started, there was only Dracula and Anne Rice.
Right.
Now you can't swing a cat without bumping into a
I
vampire.
know. But they're all, you know, it's kind of like Vampires 90210. I mean,
yes, exactly.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with Twilight, but I mean, they all look like, I mean, clearly all these vampires had a gym membership before they had their blood sucked.
And they got really bad makeup.
Yeah.
But I think the culture has changed a whole lot because of that. One of the reasons my book has been in print so long and that City Lights Books republished it is people do courses now on speculative fiction. People take actual classes. I spent a week at Bates College in Maine talking about the Gilda Stories for, I don't know, 5 classes. So
did you ever think there would be serious literature?
I had no, in fact.
I mean, I'm not saying that you didn't write them to be Dostoevsky, but I mean, did you ever really think there'd be a class?
People told me, don't do that. Lesbians don't want to be connected to vampires. Black people don't want to be connected to vampires. And I just did it anyway because I knew there was an underlying story, moral. It was an adventure, but it's all about creating family. It's all about how we create family. It's all about what do we do when we come into the world totally powerless, and then suddenly you have power. Do you act as bad as everyone else?
I mean, you know, I mean, I don't want to spend the entire time talking about vampires because I have some other serious stuff. Nothing that vampires aren't serious. But, you know, there is something about vampires that says power.
Power, it's all about
I mean,
power.
I remember as a young...
Power and sex.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember as a young gay kid in Richmond, Virginia, watching Dark Shadows.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandmother wasn't happy about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're right, there was this sexual edge to it.
Oh, yeah.
But these vampires were fierce.
They were fierce, and they still are because they have power over life and death. I mean, what more power can you have? And they're sexy.
Yeah, I remember once I interviewed Anne Rice for 3 times when she, you know, she lived in the Castro.
Right.
And I interviewed her, and I asked her once where the vampire bar was in her books, and she pointed to the old Badlands.
Oh, really?
She said vampire bars were gay bars.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, do you think there is an otherness to the vampires and being, you know, a writer of color, a lesbian? You know, is there something that all those things have together?
All come together because it's the outsider. It's the outsider, and one of the reasons I enjoy writing Gilda Stories is because it's an outsider who finds her way to community. So she doesn't remain, she may remain outside the mainstream, but she's not alone and isolated and, you know, gonna kill herself.
Right.
So it's fun. Writing about vampires is fun.
How many of them have you written?
The novel has, I think, 8 stories in it. The second novel of Gilda Stories, Redu, will probably have 10 stories in it. So.
How much of you is in that vampire?
Not really. I am not the Gilda. I am not her, although some of my family is in the books.
Do they know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And friends. I have friends back in New York when the book first came out. They're like, oh, there I am on page 47. Look at me, look at me.
Right.
And, you know, it's fun. It's a way to do our history, too.
Yeah. But, I mean, you've written a lot. Your body of work is big. You know, you have a standing in the community. But you seem to be a very optimistic person. You always have been.
Yeah.
Lately, has it been kind of hard to be optimistic?
It is. I am. Someone called me
once. Or is that
once,
just me as a wounded white liberal going, where are we?
No, somebody once called me terminally optimistic, and it has been difficult. I would say in the last several months, and I don't want to blame it all on, dare I say, Trump, but there's something about the edge in the world around violence, around entitlement, and the anger just keeps building, building, building.
Yeah, where were you born? I know of it, and I should remember.
Boston.
Okay, so right, so you're a Yankee.
I'm
you know,
a Yankee.
And
That's
you
right.
know, being born, talk about white entitlement. You know, my family, people say, "Were you an immigrant?" I was like, "Yeah, both sides came over in 1612." I mean, but looking at the world now, you know, growing up in the South in the 60s, you couldn't escape racial tension.
Right.
You were part of it, whether you were white or you were black.
Yeah.
But the racism always existed, but there was this kind of code of conduct if you were raised liberal in a family that would never have abided racism. That kind of politeness, which some people make fun of, seems to have gone away. Everything that Trump says is ugly.
Ugly, very ugly. And I think that on the other side of it, in the years when I was growing up, and Boston is pretty racist, African Americans still had hope. I think in the Latino the Latino community still had hope. And something happened after King died, after Kennedy died, after Bobby died, after Malcolm died. Something happened, and I think the African American community in particular just kind of lost hope. Things started swinging in this other direction in which people didn't want to demonstrate, they want to make money. And that was going to be the way, you know.
Then, you know, also, again, you know, owning, you know, white privilege. You know, I think white liberals thought, oh, well, you know, we're not burning down cities anymore. It's okay.
Right. We've done everything we possibly can.
And I think what's surprised a lot of people over the last few years, I think it started, frankly, with Rodney King and the LA riots.
Yeah.
A lot of white people said, oh my God, it's really bad, and people are pissed. I mean, how does that make you feel as a person of color? You know, for your white friends who say, oh my God, where did it go wrong? Do you want to say you should have seen it?
1492.
Right. I mean, does it piss you off, or do you really want to say, let me help you understand this?
You know, given who I am, I always say, well, let's talk about it. Where do you think it went wrong? And maybe that's a good starting point for you or that individual. But the history is, I mean, my family did not immigrate here. My family is Wampanoag and Iowa Indian, and my father's side from the Cape Verde Islands. So they immigrated.
You and my favorite singer.
Evora. Evora, yeah.
God rest her soul.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So it's always been there, and it gets revealed more each time. And I always say, actually I don't always say, perhaps this is the first time I'm saying it, the cell phone has done more to take the sheet off of our eyes, because everything gets recorded now. We see it. Before you didn't see it, but the cell phone has revolutionized how all of us see the world, and I think that's okay that we see it.
Yeah, but well, I know what you mean, because I mean, literally, I mean, I'm asking you these questions because you're one of those people who I read about, and that's why I say I'm ashamed I haven't had you on. I wanted you on our first show, you know, the first season, talking about LGBT issues, because the community you represent just by birth, the community you represent through your work, the community you represent through your optimism, is something that I see kind of sadly disappearing. And I say sadly because it makes me sad, because sometimes I feel now, as I get older, I am so white, they're issues that I used to think that I would learn to understand, that I feel sometimes like now, I don't know if a 20-year-old Black Lives Matters activist who I desperately want to be with and say, I'm on your side, would look at me and say, you will never understand me.
Well, maybe
and that makes me sad.
Maybe some would, but not all of them. Not all of them would. I mean, as an example, if you look at the anti-apartheid movement that liberated the country of South Africa from the hands of pseudo-Nazis, that freed Mandela, that was a movement that African National Congress said, this is not about black against white. This is about shaking off the yoke of oppression, and white people who want to be involved in shaking off that yoke need to come and do the work too, and they did. They did. I mean, I think if we can take a lesson from how South Africa created a coalition of liberation, you know, why not? And you know, we're both a little bit more mature Activism is often thought of as for the young, but mature people can figure out how to support a revolution.
Yeah, but you know, the problem is, you know, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum on, although I'm pretty sure we're not going to, either of us vote for Trump. I'll be happy to come out of that closet. There is no Mandela in the United States at the moment.
No, there isn't. There isn't. But there are some young men and women who really have strong political beliefs. I mean, I think about Cory Booker. You know, I think about Barbara, our representative in Oakland.
Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee. People who are doing the work. People who are in the Black Caucus. I mean, they had a sit down.
God bless him. And now I'm forgetting his name.
John. Oh God, isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
The
but I mean,
civil rights
Lewis.
hero, John Lewis.
You know, the guy got his head cracked open in Selma.
Right. And, you know, 40
And
years
he's not
later,
young either.
he's not giving
Yeah.
it up.
We've only got a couple minutes. Talk to me just in the last few moments we have about where do you see the role of art and writing in all of this?
There is no
Can
revolution.
words still make a difference?
There is no revolution without art. I mean, one of the reasons I have been the writer in residence, playwright in residence at New Conservatory Theater is that Ed and I both know how much social change depends on art. So every play that he produces, and he's going to produce my second one I'm so excited about, is because he knows social change comes with art.
Well, hopefully we will have you on to talk about that new play and the next play after that.
This has been great.
Time
I'm so
flies.
happy to see
Thanks
you.
for being on the show. We'll have you again. It won't take 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Always a pleasure speaking with Jewelle Gomez. I'm David Perry. Thanks for watching 10% every week, and get out there and make a difference in your community. Good night.